Welcome to Local Everywhere. I'm Cynthia Pooler. My guest today is Cara Bean, and Cara is a cartoonist and an educator, and she's here to talk about her work. So, Cara, thanks for being on the weekend of Labor Day. How are you today?
I'm very good. Thank you for
Good.
having me, Cynthia.
So, tell us about your work.
My most recent creation that took me 6 years is this book. It's called Here I Am Me, an illustrated guide to mental health. And it's a comic book. Oops, wrong direction. So you can see there's many pages of panels and word bubbles and drawings, and it's all about mental health. And it's meant for a kid audience, but anyone can read it. It's really just about any humans with brains that wonder how they work. I was an art teacher for 13 years and was noticing that there were mental health issues were coming up during the art classroom. And so I would get trainings about teenage mental health and anxiety and depression and suicide. And I would take notes to understand it. And my notes, because I'm a cartoonist, were all drawings. And over time, people were requesting me to borrow my drawings so they could use them for presentations. And I realized I should make a book. And it took me a really long time because I'm not a mental health professional. I had to collaborate with mental health professionals and wonderful editors at Workman Publishing. And I learned a lot. And it was really exciting. And the book just came out in April 2024. So it's still kind of finding its readers and getting out into the world. But I'm happy that we were able to finish it.
So, hold it up so our audience can see it.
Sure.
And it's geared to all ages.
Yeah, the publisher kind of put it at 12 and up because there is a chapter about suicide,
Mm.
and some families may want to kind of control when you have that conversation. But I've had, families that have that issue and they want to talk with a younger reader. There's nothing inappropriate in the imagery. It's all very gentle and respectful, but it's just about sort of when you're ready to have those conversations as a family.
So, how long have you been a teacher?
Let's see. I started teaching in like a public school classroom in 2005. Um,
Okay.
and then I left in 2018, but I had a couple of years that I took off to study cartooning and to do
Hmm.
different things. But I've always been like a camp counselor or I've always taught workshops and classes. I think that's just part of my personality.
Now, did you, oh God, right in the middle of a sentence, I forgot what I was going to say. Um, so did you go to school for cartooning?
Initially, I studied painting and drawing at the University at UMass Dartmouth here in South Coast, Massachusetts. And then I went on to get a master's degree in painting and drawing from the University of Washington in Seattle. And I still love painting. Um, but I was always creating very narrative paintings with uh lots of people and stories in them, and over time I didn't even know really about comics. It took friends of mine that were into it to kind of recognize in my work, like, I think you might like making comics. And I started to expand my awareness of like the different kinds of comics that are out there, and I started making them slowly on my own. And it was great being a high school teacher. My students also really liked it, so we kind of started a club and where we're all working together. So that's
Hmm.
how it started. It wasn't an immediate realization.
Hmm. So I guess a lot of your students have looked at your book, haven't they?
Hunter, yeah, I know of a few that have come to the like book signing or opening. So that's been exciting. But yeah, I don't know. It's hard weird to put out a book because you don't really, it's not like doing a theatrical performance where the audience claps or doesn't clap, and
Hmm.
it's out there and you don't know who's reading it, but you're hoping it's doing good.
So how long have you had an interest in cartooning. That seems like a fun thing.
It is fun, and it's really different from, let's say, like before my interest was like portraiture painting or drawing like figures. But actually when you get into cartooning, you might use that skill and have figures and anatomy and things like that, but you have to be able to really express an idea and action and interactions, and you can really play with metaphors.
Mhm.
There's, thought bubbles and speech bubble balloons and all kinds of little funny things, and you can have a really simple language, and sort of learning to become more and more simple over time has helped me as a cartoonist, because I think in the beginning I was like really trying to render everything and add every hair and eyelash, and that's too much work if you're going to do
Mhm.
hundreds of panels, and it's actually not that enjoyable as a reader when it's too much information, so you have to learn to pare it down.
Right. Are you teaching now?
I do workshops, and so I go to libraries and I teach whatever the library really wants to cater to. I've taught adult groups. I've certainly, like, middle school kids love me, and older elementary. I'm also just starting to do school visits about my book. So I'm looking for schools that are interested in addressing mental health in their school in sort of a non-confrontational, playful way where we could shine a light on who their counselors are or what resources are there, but can also talk about cartooning and drawing and characters and kind of keep it light and playful, even though underlining information is serious and we want you to get help if you're in a tough situation. So I'm starting to line up some school visits this year. I did a few at the end of last school year, and now I'm setting up school visits for this year.
Hmm. So, do you find that since COVID, like since 2019 and 2020, the mental health problems of kids in school yeah, go on.
I mean, no, it wasn't. I left in 2018, so it was kind of wild to be outside of that sphere when it was happening, but I'm certainly still friends with, and my family members are educators still working, and I've talked to them about it, and there is a lot of kind of repair work needed from all of the isolation, and certainly anxieties that have grown. So, and I think even before the pandemic, just like the addition of our phones and our computers and our social media, and there's just a lot on kids, and that this particular generation that's young right now has had to endure. And but I think, I mean, we feel it as adults. I certainly feel different. I feel older. I feel like a lot has happened, or maybe I have, fears that grew a little stronger because I didn't have to confront social anxiety or things like that. So kids are not alone. It's also adults. But yeah, I think there is a lot of care and attention needed for this subject.
So your book really comes in handy then, right?
I hope so. Yeah, that's the hope. It really takes, I think, reading it and then also being open to maybe discussing things as you relate to them. And then there's a lot of information in the book, and you don't have to read the entire book. Like, you could pick pieces. And I think you don't tend to care about things when they're not affecting you. Like, I
Mhm.
don't have addiction in my family, so I don't really care about that chapter. But someone else that's like, well, this is really a big deal in my family. And like, I really read that chapter carefully. And it's interesting, just book reviews on, say, sites like Goodreads and like even Amazon. You see certain people wish there were more information about certain things or less information about other things, but it's all coming from inside of us, and I think it just points to us needing more books like this from more authors that make this information accessible and easy to absorb. And it's just a small taste. It's just a first step into the water there.
Mhm. So when did you first have an interest in doing this?
Let's see. It kind of crept up on me. I call it the idea that wouldn't go away because I actually didn't want to do it for a long time because it was really hard and it wasn't my specialty. I'm
Mhm,
an art teacher. I specialize in like drawing and like coming up with projects. Like that's what I've been doing for years and years. Um,
mhm,
but I did notice that because the art room, I think, in a way, opens students and makes a safe space. And also, a lot of feelings come out when we make art, good art, and that's how the observer feels those feelings when they take in art, a beautiful piece of music, a beautiful painting, a
mhm,
sculpture, and a comic. So I was fine. There were certain students that kind of chose me as their safe person to talk to, and I would feel overwhelmed. I'm just like, I don't know what to do. So thus all the training and note taking. But what I've learned is sort of like it's great to any adult is helpful to a kid. You don't have to be specially trained. You just have to be willing to listen to them and guide them to where they need to go. And all of us can do that.
mhm.
Um, so it started in small steps. I made this little zine called Snake Pit that was just it was more for adults, talking to other teachers, coaches, parents, like, hey, if you're worried about a teen or a teen comes to you, what's information that you can do to help. And it was from a seminar that I attended. And that kept being popular and people kept asking for more and more. I would make a few and they would run out and they would ask for more. And it was kind of annoying because I was like, I just want to draw my crazy other stories or whatever else I was doing. But this like mental health piece would not go away as like something that people were like requesting from me.
Mhm.
And um, the challenge was, okay, well, this little zine that you made that's really popular speaks to adults. Could you make one that spoke directly to the kid? Because some of my students would take that zine too. Like they liked reading it, but it was like, what do you tell your young person? Kind of a narrative. And
Mhm.
that I was like, okay, this is really too hard to do and teach. I was teaching full time, 5 classes a day, waking up at 5 a.m., like doing the grind of being a teacher. And then in the weekends and the tiny hours trying to come up with um, a narrative to speak to kids. And it was way too hard. So I said, I'll take 1 year off. I had money saved. I said, I'll take 1 year off and I'll attempt to do a better job at this. And maybe I can connect it to a publisher. And like right away, I found a publisher, Workman Publishing, and
Good.
yeah, which is really exciting. And they um, pretty much just bought the idea of a book that spoke directly to kids about mental health. But I had no manuscript. It was just like I'd proven examples of my comics over the years and myself as an educator, and then actually took me 6 years to make. And if I had known that at the time, maybe I wouldn't have left. But once I stepped into it, there was no turning back. And so that's the story. But it was like this thing that a snowball kind of thing that got bigger and bigger
Right,
and it
right,
kept asking more of me. Yeah. And no one else was stepping up to do it. Like I guess I
right.
had to do it.
You know what? When you had think of a project that could be in your mind overwhelming and you want to do it, but then you realize nobody else
I
is
know.
doing it, you know, you got to follow your heart and do it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, where do you live?
I live in a town called New Bedford. It's in Massachusetts. And it's like it's a historic coastal town. And we have a national park here for the whaling industry. The turn of the century is very successful city. And then it like whaling stopped and there were other industries, but it like struggled. It's actually really supportive of artists, and they've been wonderful to me since I moved here during the pandemic to help with my parents and to work on my book. And I've found myself here. I did attend UMass Dartmouth many years ago for my undergrad. And so I knew this area. I knew I was comfortable. I love the ocean. It's near the sea.
Mm,
It's between Cape Cod and Rhode Island, in between the two.
okay.
Yeah.
So I'm sure if you go to the beach, you get and relax, you get a lot of inspiration that way, right?
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, just the any large body of water just does something really nice to my brain. It just totally brings me to peace.
That,
And I
that
have to remember
that's
to do that more often. Yeah.
that's great. So do you have any new projects in mind that you're thinking?
I do. I always do. I wish I could stop, but I can't stop. I'm really actually go back to sort of my art teacher self. One thing that I've been doing, and it kind of exploded more so during the pandemic, is mindful drawing sessions. And I would do them over Zoom in the beginning. And now that sort of things have opened up, I do them more in person. But I love talking about drawing and people, how people feel about drawing. And I feel like it's still within the realm of mental health in terms of perfectionism and, you know, writer's block and drawer artist block. And like when we feel negative towards our art and when our art brings us back and we might be in a bad place and then we can kind of cheer ourselves up by having some art time.
Mhm.
And so I think it would be fun to kind of extend my workshops into a book where I really explore it with, I have these little characters, like I have a pencil character and an eraser character and a pen and a ruler, and they all struggle with how they feel about drawing,
Mhm.
and they can kind of help each other too. So it's like a little art classroom contained in a book. That's
Mhm.
my next project.
It sounds like fun.
Yeah, yeah. It's like you could. It's not like a drawing book, like where you have to draw along and do everything. I might have some little exercises, but it really is just like anything else. It's just a story about how we conquer our little inner demons. Yeah.
Well, I think that's needed for everybody. Everybody's got an, inner demon in some shape or form, you
So
know.
true.
So, and
Especially adults. I feel
right.
like adults have a much harder time drawing than kids. It's no big deal. They draw for school. They've been drawing since littles, and it's not so traumatic. But when you ask someone who doesn't draw and hasn't let themselves draw for 20 years to draw with you, it's a much bigger block, and there's a lot more
Right.
feelings attached to it. Yeah.
Do you do portraits and stuff?
I do. I do sort of secret portraits. I love to go to like an airport and draw all the people looking at their phones or asleep. They don't know I'm drawing them. And I just fill up my sketch because I do love people. I love looking at people. And then every once in a while for like a charity event, I will
Mhm.
set up a little table and do portraits, and it's my way of contributing to the charity. And I don't charge money. It's just sort of like something you come if you came to the dinner, you can do this.
So you, by doing portraits, you're kind of tapping into their inner self, right?
I hope so. Yeah, I did one for it was it was about substance use and addiction and like really conquering the not conquering but addressing the opioid crisis. And so there are a lot of people that had really difficult lives or had lost children or they had lost parents or this is the reason we're all together to kind of just create community. So set up my little table and I just put free portraits and put a chair out and I'm staring at these different humans and really like taking them in. And even though we didn't talk a lot, I felt feelings like I was like, wow, this person's really special or this person's carrying something. You can feel those feelings when you sit with somebody, even if you don't talk.
So when you're doing a portrait, when you're penciling a portrait, like, do you kind of try to pick up their vibes and who they are? That's pretty interesting. I'm sure that nonverbal communication does teach you a lot about that other person, doesn't it?
It totally does. Like there's something magic that happens when you draw someone, but also when you draw together. Even if you're not drawing the person you're with, if you're both just making art and sitting side by side, there's a connection. Like that's
Mm.
hard to describe, but I tell the story of working at like an art festival in Florida, and there were all these, I had like a activity, like one of those like come to this table and do this craft. And mine was just basically like I think making sketchbooks, but there was all this like paper on the table, and I had worked there for hours and hours, and it was the end of the day, and I was pretty tired and just enjoying. There wasn't that many kids anymore, and I was drawing this like really involved dragon on the table, and it was like I was into it. Like I was getting all these details and putting the scales on, and this father came with these two little girls, and he found a friend. So he's like, "Oh, you get your girls go over there." I don't even think I addressed the little girls. I just kept drawing, and they just took seats near me, and they started drawing. And then we drew for maybe 10 or 15 minutes, and the dad finished his conversation. He was like, "All right, girls, time to go." And the both of the little girls got up, they came over, they hugged me, and then
Uh-huh.
they went off with their dad. And I was like, wow, like we just had this conversation totally silent, like not saying a word to each other. It was just through what was happening on the paper. And I think about that when I think it's just good to be on in paper, to have like there's so much focus on screens, and they're amazing, and the technology is amazing. I'm not taking away from that, but there's something really immediate and intimate about just like sharing space and working with your hands.
Yes, but you're looking at a person and you're drawing and you say that's intimate. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, you're just they're trusting you, you're like, okay, I'm gonna stare at you. I'm not usually allowed to just stare at someone that I don't know, like
Right,
I'm not talking to you. That's something, I mean, even your friends and family would be like, why are you staring at me if you didn't
right.
say, I'm gonna draw your picture?
Uh,
So they're saying, okay, that's okay. Like you can stare at me. I want to see what you do. And then you have this pressure like, okay, well, I hope I do something that doesn't offend you or upset you. I feel like I have enough skills that I can get. But that pressure actually motivates me to really dig deep and look, and like find the nose and find the eyes and especially the hairline, and give enough information that they'll feel like that's me, and then you give it to them.
Now, as you're drawing, I find this fascinating. As you're drawing somebody and you give them, you give them their portrait, did you ever connect and be good friends with somebody who you encountered like that?
No, they just go on with their lives, and I never talk to them again. Sometimes it's like I might kind of know them because like a family member invited me to the, like in that case, like some of my cousins showed up and sat in the chair. And so like those are people I know. Um, but yeah, the people that I don't already know, it's just like they went to the fair and got a caricature, like, and they
Right,
don't have a relationship with the caricature artist. It's like, and they don't know I wrote a book. They don't know my other life. I'm just
right.
a lady that's there. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. So if somebody want now, how would they get your book if
Okay.
somebody wanted?
Yes, you can buy Here I Am, I Am Me anywhere you buy books. So it's like at Barnes and Noble, it's at your go to your public, I mean like the bookstore in your town that you want to support that's an independent bookstore. I would say do that first and say, "Hey, order this book for me if it isn't already there." Of course, you can buy it from Amazon or any other, online place,
Mhm.
um, or directly from the publisher. But yeah, it's out in the world and it's easy to access. And actually, it's a really great thing if people get it from their libraries because then it's there for an entire community as a resource. So
Uh-huh.
I would say if you don't, and that's free, and you're still helping me as an artist, just say, hey, do you have this book? I heard it's really good, and then take it out of the library. And if you really want to help an author, something you can do completely for free is log on to a website called Goodreads and review the book. And that helps it grow and have other people give the book attention.
That's interesting. You must have you have a market in libraries, don't you?
Yeah, libraries have been a wonderful support for me. as a place to teach and be a presenting artist, but also to host my book and to talk about my book. And yeah, I think librarians have been my cheerleaders, and I'm really lucky that to have some great libraries in here in Massachusetts, but also Rhode Island and Connecticut. These are all places that I've been connecting with librarians.
That's terrific. So, do you do you have a website?
I do. It's carabeancomics.com. And if you want, I can send you some links if you want to put them in the descriptor of your
Okay.
video. Yeah. And yeah, you can come to my website. There's more information. I have comics that are not in print that you can read on my website about my dog and just more about mental health. That initial zine I told you about, Snake Pit, that's on my website. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, it's a good way to get to know more information about me. Or if you are a school or a library and you want to contact me, you can find me through carabincomics.com and send me an email.
Thank you so much, Cara. This has been a fun interview. You've been listening to Cara Bean, who's a cartoonist and an educator. I'm Cynthia Pooler. This is Local Everywhere. If you like this show, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. And since this is so important in the age of COVID, when there's so many problems that kids and even adults encounter, this is a book for everybody to look at. Thanks, Carrie. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Have a wonderful day.
Hi, thank you, Cynthia. This is a pleasure.